The only downside about being healthy and trying to be, health conscious and whatever is that, try to drink a gallon of water a day. The only downside of drinking a gallon of water a day is now you have to go to the bathroom like 5 more times than you originally had planned to do in that day. I have gone to the bathroom more times than I have in one day than I have in almost a month. Being healthy is overrated. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of Because I Have a Live Mic here on Fluent Radio. What is good, everybody? Hope you guys have a great week. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. We're going to talk about some great sports topics, such as we're going to recap NBA championship games, and we're going to talk about why Anthony Edwards is not playing at the level I expected him to be, and are the Knicks kind of choking this opportunity away. We're also going to talk about MLB and how if Pete Rose is going to get his lifetime ban permanently removed and put into the Hall of Fame, should they let the steroids guys in as well? We're also going to talk about NFL news and why Brock Purdy's big payday for the 49ers may be a sign of things to come for the 49ers franchise. Speaking of franchises, we are also going to talk about the death of dynasties in sports and how they may be looking a little different in the futures. But first, we're going to talk about the NBA championship game so far. Outside of the blowout win for Minnesota against the Thunder and the 20-point comeback for the Knicks, let down a little bit is a slight way of putting it. I've been by these championship games. I mean, I wasn't expecting, game seven level intensities in every game, but they have been kind of mid, and like it sucks because I was expecting a little bit something different, but like for these guys to have these type of performances on this stage, nah. And I mean, it's not like everybody. Like I think the Eastern Conference Finals have been a little bit more intensified than the Western Conference Finals because those have been blowout, blowout, blowout. But yeah, I'm more okay. Let me put it like this: I'm more disappointed in guys like Anthony Edwards and guys like Cat, and I'm more disappointed in those guys because, especially more in Anthony Edwards than I am on Cat part, because for Anthony Edwards, this was his chance to kind of prove that he reluctantly is the face of the league, right? Like this is his chance to kind of prove that he is that dude that everyone has talked about, that dude that everybody has been saying that he is becoming the, like I said, the face of the NBA. And not just in this playoff series, but in this playoff run, he has not really been that guy. Right? Like we give him credit for being, you know, the star of the Wolves, so he gets all the credit, but he has not been performing well or at a high level that he has been in times past. Right? Like you can look at the Lakers series, right? The closeout game against the Lakers, that was a Rudy Gobert 20 and 20 double double that led them to the win when he only scored 15 points. You look at the closeout game against the Warriors, Julius Randle had like 29 points and took that game over, and he ended up with like, I think 15 points. And now in this game that just happened on, I think, Monday, he was held for 2 shots in the first half, only had 2 points, and only had 14 points. I think 14 or 15 points in the whole game. When you're essentially playing for your season at that point, because it's hard for them to come back now down 1-3, right? 3-1, 3-1, 3 center, right? Like down 3 games to 1. It's hard for them to come back, especially if Anthony Edwards is going to continue to play at kind of a mid-level, right? Like he has not been performing at the level we expected from this level superstar. And it's hard to kind of give him a pass because he kind of brought this on himself when he said he wanted to smoke with everybody. So now he's getting the smoke, so to speak, and he's not, kind of living up to the hype, so to speak. And it sucks. because this was his coming out party essentially, right? Like he took down the legends, he took down the old heads, got to go against the new MVP, the young OG right now, and he was supposed to be the one that's to take him out and kind of set up the basically the finals to see who really won this trade between Minnesota and New York. But he hasn't really been stepping up. And yeah, you can try to blame like coaching, you can try to blame a lot of it, but just a lot of it is him not stepping up to the, that time and pressure. Like, I'm not going to put the James Harden label on him just yet because he hasn't been successful for like a long time, right? This is just his second year getting the Wolves to the Western Conference Finals. But I'm not going to sit up here and say he's a choke artist either, right? Because he just hasn't been playing very well. But what I will say is that Anthony Edwards needs to step up more and needs to take over a game, right? Like, I appreciate, like, the Wolves are built very well, where they have a great bench. They're deep on the bench. The kid from Illinois is really good. He's popped out for 2 games, right? He's established himself as a future, star or role player on that team. But if you're Anthony Edwards, you're the superstar. You're the face of that organization right now. You're the guy that has to step up and put this organization on the back. They traded away, and I'll be honest with you, a very big piece of that team in Karl-Anthony Towns because they bet on you. So you have to step up to the plate and show that them betting on you was worth it. So if Anthony Edwards can step up, I think this would be a series. But now it's hard for it to be, right? Like it's. I don't want to say. I will say it's a little too late. Right? Like they may end up pushing this game to 6, but maybe even 7. But I don't know if they can come back from down 3-1. Right? Like I don't think that. I don't think it's not that they don't have the team for it. I just don't think they have the mentality for it. Right? Like, because it is a special thing to kind of come down from 3 games to 1. Right? Like, that is why very few teams have done it. Right? Like, very few teams have come down to at least, at the very least, push a game 7, not only to win the series. And while I think Anthony Edwards may have that mentality, I don't think the whole team does. And for people to sit up here and kind of say that, to throw it all on his feet is kind of hard to say as well, because this is only his second year, and now this is the first year where he is the major player of it. Like, he's the conductor of this whole team on the court. So Anthony Edwards definitely does have to step up in these next few games if they even want to have a shot at rebounding in this series. Speaking of rebounding in the series, this series is over. I'm sorry. Like, this series is over. They may push it back to 6 games just so the Pacers can win it on the Indiana floor, but this series is over. Everybody's banged up. The Tibbs special is coming in hard, right? Like the Thibodeau special, where he just runs players down till they ain't got no legs no more. They just be stubs on the court, right? Like the Tibbs special is kicking in because the Knicks are falling apart, right? You look at the end of that game against the Indiana Pacers on Tuesday, Cat was limping, was not all the way 100% on that leg. OG came down and twisted his ankle. Jalen Brunson looks tired. Like, they are an extremely tired team because they got the Thibodeau special going on. But outside of that, the Indiana Pacers, I will continue to say this, look like the best team in the NBA playoffs right now. Because everything I said about Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves is the exact opposite of what the Indiana Pacers are. They are a complete team, meaning they don't need Halliburton to be the guy to step up to win games for them, right? Like, obviously Halliburton is going to be the guy there, right? He had a triple-double on Tuesday, but like, there have been some games where he hasn't scored, more than 20 points or more than 15 points, and they've pulled it out. The Pacers are the most complete team in this playoffs, and it's a lot to do with how they play. You cannot just key in on one person. We see what happened with Minnesota when the Thunder keyed in to stopping Ant. They had to make other people beat them, and other people were not getting shots falling, right? Julius Randle was not there on Monday. But you look at this Indiana Pacers team, if you want to stop Halliburton, cool. Siakam's going to go off. Naismith may drop something. Obi Toppin can come off the bench and put it over the top. They have the most complete team because they have a deep bench. They have people who've been there before. And the one thing that every team should have is a chip on their shoulder. People were downing them, saying that it was a fluke that they got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Now they're proving that it wasn't a fluke. They deserve to be here. So you can say whatever you want, but it is over for New York. Indiana's got that in the bag. They have it in the bag. And shout out to New York. Listen, no matter how this season goes for them, I think they won the trade with Minnesota. Obviously, they won it because they got to a place that they have not been since 2002. Not 2002, 2000. It's so hard because like you think about it, it's like, golly, that is not that far long ago. But then you realize it's 25 years ago. So yeah, it is far ago. But in New York won this trade because they got to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? I think it was not even a step backwards. It was a step in between for Minnesota because they got to the exact place they were at last year. The reason why they traded Cat, because they thought Cat wasn't the thing. They didn't need him to get over the hump. And they were in the exact same position that they were last year. So at the end of the day, if nothing else, it is 100% true that New York Knicks, y'all won the trade for Cat. Because y'all were so close to the finals. Y'all are almost there. It may be time, I don't know, but it may be time to think about switching out coaches. So we don't talk about much baseball on this show just because, well, I'll give you two exact reasons. A, I'm a Chicago White Sox fan. B, the Cubs are great during the regular season, but always choke in the playoffs. So there's not much to talk about with baseball here outside of, earth-shattering, groundbreaking, record-destroying contracts that these guys been signing. I'm just waiting. I am legitimately waiting for the first $1 billion contract in MLB because it's going to happen in MLB first before anything. But no, we don't talk about much baseball on the show unless something, kind of groundbreaking happens, which is kind of doing it right now. So if you don't know, Pete Rose, obviously MLB hit king, he's got over like 40,000 hits or whatever, is up for the Hall of Fame. But if you don't know, Pete Rose has currently a lifetime ban in the MLB and is currently banned from being potentially in the Hall of Fame because he's banned from the league. And the ban is currently being looked at right now, right? Like they're looking at it because if you don't know, Pete Rose was banned from the MLB for life because he was gambling on his own team when he was the manager of the Reds in the 89 season. So he was gambling, basically putting over and unders in, which, again, at the time, rightfully so, the, Rule 21 is posted in every MLB locker room for that distinct reason. And so, yeah. And also, again, if you didn't know what Rule 21 was, it was because of the Black Sox scandal, a scandal involving my White Sox, back in like the early 1920s, that Prohibition era. If you ever seen Boardwalk Empire, this was a case that Arnold Rothstein was being, tried about because he essentially paid 7 or 8 White Sox players to throw the game. He paid them about $100,000. So, and I did the math. $100,000, 100K in 20 era money is almost $1.8 million. So he essentially paid the water boy's salary to throw a game back then, essentially. But yeah, they threw a game. Obviously, they found out, and then the Rule 21 was obviously again making sure nobody was effectively betting on themselves to throw games, right? And Pete Rose, as the manager for the Reds, was doing that, right? Like he was manager for the Reds, so it is looked upon poorly by people when you were the manager and throwing games, essentially, right? It didn't even help the next year they won the World Series, but I digress. But no, his ban is getting lifted, and obviously, I think this has a lot to do with FanDuel, a lot to do with DraftKings and online sports betting being practically legal in almost every state now. So now, obviously, it's harder to sit there and justify Pete Rose being out when you have people as late as last season being caught for banning and for being caught rigging games, essentially, right? But my question there is to this: if Pete Rose gets his ban lifted and he is no longer permanently banned and he gets into the Hall of Fame, because he's arguably a first ballot Hall of Famer, if he gets into the Hall of Fame, the morally superior high ground people will have no choice but to start putting a lot of those steroid guys in. Like, they will legitimately have no choice but to put them in. Because you can't have this moral superiority talking about how, well, the PED guys, affected the leagues in such a way that we can't overlook this while you have the guy who was caught gambling in the Hall of Fame. Right? Like, you can't call that moral superiority that you do. Right? I will be 100% honest. If you thought the MLB did not know those guys were on steroids, even if they didn't start testing in 2024, right? 2004, not 2024, 2004. They didn't start testing till then. But if you think that the MLB did not know it, you're crazy. You are absolutely crazy. You want to know how I know? The most popular time in baseball was the summer of 98, when we had the race to 62 between Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. It was literally the most popular baseball has ever been. There's no way the MLB never knew that one or both of those guys were on steroids. We all know the most popular thing about baseball is a home run. And you mean to tell me that you saw a guy from Barry Bonds who went from a skinny little kid to this basically milk dug on literal steroids, and you never figured out that anything was weird? You just thought he worked hard and ate all his vitamins? Nah, he was using something. And again, if you are asking me who is worse, right? Because to me, betting on a game that you're playing in, that you have a direct outcome on how this game can go, is worse than steroids. Because again, in baseball, just because you juiced doesn't mean they were going to win the World Series. We had people who were juicing who still never won a World Series. It's a team game. So yeah, one player may be, increasing your chances, but still. And then when you have a guy like Pete Rose who directly impacted the game he was in, because he knew, hey, if I put this guy in this situation, if I tell this guy to do this when I know it's going to go the other way, or if I start this guy over this guy, it gets more money for me. That's worse than steroids. That's worse than that. So you got, and again, it's sticky, right? Like you have to admit it is very sticky because of the fact that you do have DraftKings, BetMGM, Bet Rivers, Caesar. You have all of these things, right? You have places right now in stadium betting. You can literally go there and even spend more money to bet in the stadium. If you're like out of town and you're trying to bet, you can do it right there. But to say that Pete Rose has to be out would be a little hypocritical, is right. But the only thing I will say to that is because, again, in my opinion, what Pete Rose did was worse because of the fact that he directly impacted the flow of the game. But you have the people who are morally superior, who love to do this and love to overlook Pete Rose's negative impact onto the game, but to say because they use steroids, that's where I draw the line at. Gambling, domestic abuse, drug abuse. Let's be honest, baseball has been around since the 1800s. Someone was in there doing some sugar, some no sugar, riding a white horse, if you catch my drift. Somebody was doing something because it was legal-ish in certain time frame in the 90s and 80s, 1880s, you catch my drift, right? It was legal there, right? In a league where they just now accepted black people stats, right? Like they just now approved are actually adding in the Negro League stats to their, actual stats. You're going to leave out guys who did steroids to make your sport more popular. Because if you want my opinion, if y'all hate steroid abuse so much, then stop playing on MLB TV every time y'all ratings get a low. Y'all play something that has anything to do with the 89 race in the summer. Right? Like stop using that. Stop talking about the Yankees in the 90s because, hey, a lot of those guys, Jason Giambi, was on steroids. Canseco, right? Again, Canseco, the only person that said, yeah, I was using it. Yeah, I was out there doing it. Right? It's like, if you want to sit here and talk about you were protecting the game and PDs are cheating too, but it's not manipulating results, in my opinion. Like I said, that is a more cardinal sin to me. That is more low down and dirty to me because you're literally manipulating the results of a game to favor not you or the fans, but the them pockets. So if you, again, and hold on, because just think about the names of people not in the MLB, because not in the Hall of Fame. And by the way, it's a Hall of Fame. It's not a church. You're not going there because these guys were some great beacons of hope and prosperity. Like, they're athletes, right? Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Alex Rodriguez, Mike McGuire, Sammy Sosa, Jason Giambi, Andy Pettitte, Jose Canseco, Dave Justice, and Kevin Brown are all not in the Hall of Fame because of the steroids involvement, because people are sitting there saying that they cannot do it. But if, like I said, if Pete Rose gets in and is a first ballot Hall of Famer, there is, to me, that is an issue. Because you cannot claim moral superiority. You cannot sit here and say that Pete Rose, again, might have, did some dirt, but I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. But that's just my opinion. If y'all think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, but don't think the steroids guy should be in there, or do y'all think cheating is cheating? Either way it goes. So shout out to Brock Purdy. He did just get paid 5 years, $265 million, guaranteed contract. Yeah. this is good on both parties, right? Like this is good for Brock Purdy. He gets paid and can actually afford himself a nice studio apartment in San Francisco, right? But it also works out for him. He gets paid. He gets paid the money that he is owed. He also didn't overcharge San Francisco so they can still make improvements so that way they can still get better and still do this while their window is still slightly open, especially depending on how Christian McCaffrey goes from this season, right? But it worked out for them because they get a good solid quarterback for years to come. The only problem is this starts a trend, if you will, for it's a trend of a downward spiral for San Francisco 49er quarterbacks who sign a big time deal, right? Like I don't want to say it's cursed, but it's cursed a little bit, right? Like because you look at ever since I will say Steve Young, because putting Joe Montana on this list would obviously be dumb, right? 4-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, one of the greatest of all time, right? That would be dumb. Including Steve Young, because he did have a rocky start to his San Francisco 49er career, not really being, that great for a few games until, 94 season where he won the Super Bowl, won the MVP, all of those things. But ever since he retired from injuries with the San Francisco 49ers, it has been a weird kind of spiral thing down, right? Because you look at Jeff Garcia, the quarterback that took over for Steve Young, he had kind of a fire season, right? 2 playoff appearances, 3 Pro Bowls, right? He was a very good starter kind of until he got paid, right? And then that's when it kind of went downhill for him, right? Like he was released after signing a big, at the time, a big time contract with the San Francisco 49ers. Then he got released and, they went with Alex Smith, right? And obviously the we could do a whole thing on Alex Smith and the San Francisco 49ers just because, again, it will forever be kind of linked with them passing on Aaron Rodgers, or at the time frame where he was in Cal, everybody thought it was going to be San Francisco and Aaron Rodgers and the what if scenario that could have been. But he struggled early, right? Like he never really lived up to that, number one pick hype, right? He struggled early. He had 6 consecutive offensive coordinators in and out in 7 seasons. He never was able to kind of live up to that hype until he got to when Jim Harbaugh first got there, and they went 13-3. They went to the AFC Championship game. They got knocked out by San Francisco. They got knocked out by the Seattle Seahawks, and he got hurt. And after signing the 3-year deal that he did in 2011, he got hurt, and he never was able to get his starting job back, and he never really was able to kind of live up to that. So that was a weird spiral, right? And then it also starts a weird trend too of the next 3 quarterbacks I'm going to name all had a win rate of 49%. All of them. And it's so weird because then it's just so cool. It's my grandfather would always say this, right? Once is an accident, twice is a convenience, 3 times is a pattern, right? And you look at the pattern of quarterbacks, because to go from Alex Smith, who got hurt, to Colin Kaepernick, right? Colin Kaepernick, obviously we all know what happened with Colin Kaepernick. Took them to the Super Bowl for the Harbaugh Bowl, right? In the same year he took over the job from Alex Smith right? He took them to the Super Bowl, lost it, obviously. He signs a big, at the time, big 6-year deal worth 114 million, right? Then that's when the decline happened for him as well, right? Coaching changes, injuries, dysfunctionality with the team, upheaval, kind of went out a little controversially. depending on which side of the political spectrum you land on, depends how you feel about that. I'm not going to say what I feel. You probably can surmise how I feel about him. I think he didn't do anything wrong, so it is what it is. But again, even though his play declined even before he started kneeling, right? Like his play declined rapidly. And again, it's just a little weird, right? Then you got Jimmy Garoppolo, right? You have Jimmy Garoppolo. He gets traded for, he gets traded from the Patriots. He goes 5-0 his first few games there, gets into the NFC Championship game, gets paid. He gets legitimately paid. He gets 5 year, 137 mil. Again, a deal that at the time made him the highest paid quarterback. And I'll be honest with you, when he got paid in 2018, the next year he led them to a Super Bowl, right? And everybody else thought this is it, right? Like they found the next San Francisco 49er quarterback that's going to lead them away. And injuries for him started piling up. Torn ACL, high ankle sprains, surgery on his shoulder. And then obviously they just drafted Trey Lance. They traded away a lot of picks to get to the third overall pick to get Trey Lance. They traded away 3 first round picks, right? Mind you, again, this past year was the first time they actually got to pick in the first round of the NFL draft, right? And he never really lived up. And shocker, right? Like a guy who really only played like a few games in college was not that great. But then in that same draft, you have a Brock Purdy, right? Obviously, a guy takes over for Jimmy Garoppolo when he gets hurt, leads into a championship game. The next season, he leads you to a Super Bowl, right? He leads you to a Super Bowl in the next season. The season after that, he kind of has a little downtick in his, he kind of has a little downtick. And there's a pattern. If you have not surmised it or picked up on it, it's a pattern. After a quarterback signs that big contract with the San Francisco 49ers, they go downhill and they're completely stuck in the cycle. Oh, and by the way, Jimmy G's win rate, 69%. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. That's why that joke is funny. But getting back to Brock Purdy and the kind of weird curse that the San Francisco 49ers have, ever since Steve Young, it has always been a same kind of pattern. Quarterback comes in, gets paid, gets hurt. The quarterback behind him, either draft or on their roster already, picks up the mantle, has a great run, gets paid, gets hurt, and so forth and so forth. It's hard not to sit here and say that it's not a weird level of just like coincidence. It is hard not to look at that and say something is going on in San Francisco to where all of your quarterbacks are like that. That is too convenient. But do I think Brock Purdy has a chance to beat it? I think so. I think Brock Purdy is a very good quarterback for what they spent on him to get as Mr. Irrelevant, and again to get him very cheaply. It should work out. But I just think it's so weird that has constantly been the thing over the past few years for San Francisco 49er quarterbacks. So I know we briefly touched on this the other day, and I know I kind of just like brushed it over and didn't like go into detail because I'd already got to kind of talking point. Hold on 1 second. Oh, excuse me. Pardon me. I had already talked about the segment I was doing was going too long, so I didn't want to feel like in going for any longer. So it was like, but I went back and I was like, started to think on it, and it is true in a sense that there are no more like real sports dynasties anymore, right? Like we view it we view it differently nowadays, right? Like it is harder to view it, and it's for a few different reasons, right? Like it's just, especially now with the NBA eventually crowning a first-time champion this year, right? Not a champion named LeBron or Steph for the past, what feels like forever since these two have been in the NBA and hit their peaks. It has been a combination without a few years of a Steph Curry or a LeBron James either in a finals or winning a finals, right? So it has been a lot to say that Dynasty still exists in a certain form. But, you know, dynasties aren't just about winning. I think we get so confused and so hung up on like winning when we hear a dynasty. We don't think about just the success of a team in general, right? When you have someone like a Steph Curry who is a four-time champion, someone who's been to the finals multiple times over multiple decades with multiple teammates, right? That is a dynasty into itself. It's a sustained success, so to speak, right? And for dynasties to kind of stay intact, it takes a lot of effort. And I think over time, that effort gets burnt down to the ground because, again, you look at draft picks, you look at free agency, you look at trades, you look at coaching hires, you look at front office hires, you look at culture that the coaches in front office built, players buying into it. It's a lot that goes into a dynasty, and I just think that people tend to forget that, right? Like, perfect example is the Patriots, right? And the Patriots dynasty started, with, again, I don't think they fully intended and fully knew that this pick at 199, a quarterback from Michigan who still had the worst combine I've ever not seen in a draft, was going to be a seven, well, for that organization, a six-time, world champ, right? Multiple MVP, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever do it. I don't think the Patriots like knew it all along. They had the fortune teller there, right? Like, again, some dynasties, whether people want to admit it or not, take luck in it as well. But like, you look at how the Patriots built, right? Built through the draft. Robert Kraft getting in there, finding a guy in Bill Belichick who ended up being the greatest coach to ever coach, right? Not letting his ego get in the way of the team's success, knowing that he is a piece of the machine. He is not the mechanic that runs the machine, right? He is the piece of the machine that helps build this team up to being a dynasty. And you have Coach Belichick, who, again, whether they come in, whether they are white boys off the street or high draft picks, right? He knows how to build a team from regular, degular guys to, freak athletes, right? He can build a team no matter where it goes. And it's just it's very hard to say. Sustained success is the key for them, right? Like, once they got there, they didn't go anywhere. Like, they weren't leaving. It wasn't oh, well, we're happy to get here 1 year. Like, no, they got in and they stayed in there. And for them, it was just a big part of it, right? And you can look at sports dynasties over multiple sports, right? Obviously, the Patriots, not Bills, the Bulls, the Lakers, the Warriors, those are more like, especially the Warriors later on, like later in the 2010s, right? The Warriors, but for a long time, it was the Bulls and the Lakers that were the bigger names, right? Like, obviously Boston too, but just in a bigger market, Bulls and Lakers, right? MLB, obviously, got the Yankees, of course, right? And for each of these teams and each of these dynasties, it was just built off of, great front office people, great players, great coaching, an overall built of a team. And we won't see dynasties like that for a while because not even, and I know a lot of people will say definitely like the super team was the thing that killed the dynasties. Like, there were always super teams. Like, it was just the way you built it, right? Like people don't like super teams when they are bought. They like built up super teams. Like again, Showtime Lakers, the run of the Bulls in the '90s, right? They like the team that was built through hard work, determination, and smart trades and great front office moves. They don't like teams who buy championships, quote unquote. And we'll get to another reason why dynasties are dying off, very quickly. But they don't like sort of that, right? And this is the reason why there are no more true dynasties anymore, because teams can kind of build super teams, right? Like, again, perfect example. Everyone knows the 7 most famous words that, in my opinion, is now a fixed point in time. I'm taking my talents to South Beach, right? I'm taking my talents to South Beach. Yeah, 7. Right? Like the 7 words that changed the NBA for the foreseeable future, right? Even though LeBron James wasn't technically the first team to get a super team, it was Boston. Like people tend to forget about that, but we won't talk about that anymore. Yeah, he changed the league by those 7 words, teaming up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami to go on to win 2 titles. But it changed the league because it was kind of the first time a free agent basically held the NBA hostage for so long, right? Like that it had never been a point of where it was just like it felt like a big time college recruit going to your city where you're trying to pitch to him why he should come to your organization, right? Like there was never a point in time for that, and it gave the players a little bit of a player of empowerment to where if I ball out, if I go crazy, I have a chance to go play with another superstar, or I have a chance that a superstar will come and be ready to go with me, and we can team up and we can take the league over. And it created the team hop chase ring narrative, which kind of destroyed the dynasty thing from just building through the draft, free agency, trades, that nose to the grind thing, because one of the things that helped keep dynasties together was team consistency, team cohesion, right? It wasn't just a revolving door of people who coming in who just want to win a title, right? It wasn't a mercenary type of scenario like it ended up being now. And you can see that in how, hell, let's be honest, right? In the LeBron James was viewed as a mercenary for a little bit, right? Especially when he left Cleveland to go to LA. It was a mercenary move, right? They needed another star there. Once Kobe retired, they got the biggest star they had in the NBA. But it was a mercenary kind of move because, again, he held the league. This time, not so much hostage. He didn't hold them hostage this bad because, coming off of that, kind of a blowout loss, basically a gentleman, not a gentleman sweep. They swept them in the finals against the Warriors. Uh, Another team that kind of killed dynasties. We'll get back to that one in a minute. But yeah, no, player empowerment kind of helped destroy dynasties because, again, teams weren't able to keep their homegrown star there. He left and wanted to, chase a ring or, choose his own narrative, create his own star power and buzz. So it kind of helped shrink that a little bit. Like, again, just think about this. Like, again, literally think about it, right? Out of the 10 NBA champions we had, 8 of them overhauled their roster within 2 years, right? This win now, blow it up, we'll start over somewhat thing is killing dynasties because there's no, like I said, they don't want to build. They don't want to keep it together. They want to win now. And again, a lot of that has to do with egos, especially the egos of the guys up top. Mind you, The key phrase that broke up the greatest basketball organization in the 90s: players don't win championships, organizations do. This is why I will forever not be mad at Bulls fans for booing Jerry Krause's widow. Y'all can say whatever y'all want. It was rude, it was classless, it was tasteless. They broke up the greatest team of the 90s because he wanted more credit. I'm not, again, business wise, I understand why head honchos, GMs, president of player operations, I understand why they are more in a win now mentality. They don't get, contracts like the players do, right? If you have a player who is bad, he may be bad for one season. He may be able to pick it up next season. For like front office execs, they don't have a next season to get better. They have to get better right away. And if that means blowing up a potentially greatest team of all times, they're willing to do it. They are willing to do it. And I can't be mad at them for, hey, they are still an employee in an organization. Like I said earlier, the reason why Robert Kraft was able to win 6 titles because he understood he is not the reason why they're winning. I think it ended up kind of switching up near the end, but he wasn't the reason why they're winning. It was him, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, the players on the Patriots. He's a cog in the machine, right? Jerry Krause wanted to be the cog and the reason why they were winning, right? Nobody was sitting up there thanking Jerry Krause for winning the title. It was Michael, Phil, Scotty, Horace Grant, B.J. Armstrong, Ron Artest. It was those guys. But Jerry Krause wanted the credit. Jerry Krause wanted the praise. He wanted the acknowledgement. He wanted all of that. So he let's not forget, he tried to trade away Mike earlier in the year. He tried to trade away Scotty. Now, granted, that would again, another what if scenario that I don't think people talk about enough is the fact that we could have had a young T-Mac and a young Vince Carter on the Bulls. That is another what if that I don't think people truly understand how big of a deal that would have been. Imagine a young T-Mac, a young Vince Carter on the same team with a Michael Jordan who was still physically leaving his peak. So that means he still was pretty good. Ooh, that would have been chef's kiss. But we don't talk about that because I think it is a very, not so much even a taboo subject, because we don't want to give credit where credit is due. And for a lot of the owners, they feel I don't want to say slighted, but they feel lessened, so to speak. And nobody wants to feel lessened, right? Like nobody wants their accomplishments to be downgraded because you're just a pencil pusher. You're just a guy who signs the checks. You aren't the guy who actually, does anything of importance to this team for it to win, right? Nobody wants to feel like that. But you have to admit, if you are a owner or a president or a GM, you can't let your ego get in the way and ruin a good team because you want more credit. You want more of the praise. You want more of it, right? Because again, what comes with a lot of that praise comes a lot of that negativity. Like those stars, those people, they can take it a lot more than possibly you can. And it's not just a Jerry Krause. We all know about Jerry and his stubbornness, right? Getting rid of Jimmy Johnson getting rid of Jimmy Johnson while he just won you a Super Bowl because nobody was giving Jerry Jones the credit he was due. You got the Warriors trading away James Harden, which again, to me, is the third biggest what if in the NBA, because you traded away potentially what could have been what we see now with the OKC Thunder, right? Where you had a James Harden, you had a Russell Westbrook, you had a Kevin Durant. You traded away what potentially could have been a dynasty in the making, right? I get it. You had to trade away because you weren't going to pay James Harden what he owed, and him being a glorified, six man. But you never really, you're just now coming out of that kind of, slot that y'all were in for a while, right? And it's so weird to say that, right, with a team who, constantly made the playoffs, who constantly made Western Conference Finals, who, again, literally not too long ago had the defending Golden State Warrior champs on the ropes, up 3-1. Like, let's not forget that. But it's hard for me to say that they didn't blow it with the Thunder with that organizational change and wanted to blow that team up just to save a quick buck, right? So, and we get it. Winning costs money. Nobody's going to sit here and say that you have to try to, keep it the same, but there are certain ways that you can do it, that you can keep teams together, right? And sometimes, like I said, it's getting a rookie quarterback. And again, I'll say this, right? Even with the one thing that a lot of people don't think will understand is that the decline of Dynasty comes from it's a money situation. You can't pay all of those players. You're going to have to cut somebody, right? Again, the Patriots cut Lori Malloy, a safety for them that was there from the trenches with them when they were terrible. After they won the Super Bowl, they cut him immediately because they needed the money, right? I think the biggest case of a wasted dynasty was the Seattle Seahawks and the Legion of Boom. Ever since they won that Super Bowl, when they had a chance to go back to back, mind you, they had a chance to go back to back. They had Russ on a rookie quarterback deal, defense that was mostly on rookie deals, right? A dominant defense, and conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat on, whatever you want to say. I still, to this day, stand by the fact that the reason why they didn't run the ball with Marshawn Lynch is they wanted Russell Wilson to be the Super Bowl MVP that year, so that way they could justify giving him that big contract. Again, it only makes sense. It only makes sense the reason why they justify that contract. Because after that, downhill. They weren't able to pay, they weren't able to keep all their players, right? I still will never forget about the fact that Earl Thomas played basically for free out there, got hurt. They weren't going to pay Richard Sherman, and he signed with, the rival team up north in San Francisco. They let Byron Maxwell walk. Cam Chancellor retired, and they broke up the, Legion of Boom. In a matter of like 3 years, the Legion of Boom was no more. And they themselves have not really recovered from that either. Because again, a lot of that key factor in there in the decline of dynasties, culture. We talked about this, right? From trades to team hopping to axing people. Once that culture is gone, it's hard to kind of find another one. It's kind of hard, right? We saw it, again, keeping on the Seattle thing. Ever since they've lost that hard-nosed defense, run the ball, they have not been the same. Now they're trying to get back to it, which is why I think they traded away DK Metcalf for that reason. But they have never really been the same. And for them particularly, it hurt a lot more than I think a lot of people wanted to give them credit for, because they were just never the same. Like, their down tick started once they got rid of a lot of that culture in that locker room. And again, it's also okay. So this one is hard because I feel as if because one of the biggest things that turns people against dynasties is social media. Because I had thought about this from an outsider's perspective. Like, oh man, everyone loves a Cinderella story until Cinderella goes to the ball and now she's off being a part of, high society. So now it goes back in the cycle of we have to hate her because she's part of high society. And I was just like, man, I've never been on the side of, where your team is the dominant team. Everybody's trying to take you down and take you out. I've never been on the side of that. And then I realized we kind of were, we just didn't have a social media to kind of blow it out of proportion or to constantly change the narrative about it. And if you get where I'm saying is because if you were born, if you were a kid or a teen or an adult in the 90s and you were in Chicago, you were the people were looking at like, after that first title, you're a hero. That's always how it starts. Is the first title, you're the underdog. Everyone loves you. You did it. You finally overcame every obstacle and you won. But then you start to win, and then you go from the famous Harvey Dent quote: "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain." And that kind of helped kill some of these dynasties because it went from a healthy level of competitional, respectful hate to just like, I don't like you because you're winning too much. Right? Prime example, right? Tom Brady. Tom Brady is a perfect example. Is the perfect example of, I'll be honest with you, hateration, holleration, all in this danceria. Right? To go from a feel good story from, again, draft pick 199 to Super Bowl champ, and everybody loved it, right? Like he was the, golden boy. He was the thing that, Brock Purdy that is today, right? If you work hard enough, you do it all the right way, you can get to be a Super Bowl champion, right? And then he started winning and winning and winning. And I think I, I always say this. I think everybody gets two, right? Like you get your first Super Bowl champion as the underdog, and then you get a second one, and then after that second one, everybody's just like, okay, now we don't like you anymore. Especially if you do it back to back, or if it's you win 2 years, or 2 or 3 years, or 2 and 4 years, right? Like it's one of those cases where it's just like, okay, we're tired of you now. We're tired of you winning. We're tired of this, right? Like we want to hate you now, but you're so good we can't hate you, right? Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes is the perfect example, right? Because he goes from being the future of the league to this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed guy with a great arm, great potential, wins the Super Bowl, knocked out the current GOAT at the time, and Tom Brady goes on to win the Super Bowl. Everybody loves it. Feel good story, right? And he has a more interest because literally the year after that is COVID year, right? And he's going against Tom Brady, and it's the chance to kind of prove himself and see who's the real GOAT and all of these things. And he loses, and I think once he lost, it kind of made us even more like on his side, so to speak. It was just like, man, he lost because the O-line was terrible. He tried everything himself. He was doing everything by himself. And then he won again. And not just won, he dominated that year. He was arguably the best quarterback. And then he signed that big ass contract. And then ever since he signed that big ass contract, that's when the hate started. That's when hate came in, hate fuel comments, everything, right? They didn't like his voice, his this also probably was the biggest thing too. They didn't like his voice. His wife and brother are too, out there, and they're making a bad image for him, and he's winning too much now. And We don't like the fact that he's winning all this time and so on and so forth. And that was the key thing is once you start winning, we the public tend to turn you into the villain because we don't like the fact that you win so much. But I also think we need that a little bit because again, we need the hate fueled comments, right? One of the biggest things, again, we all talked about Miami going in there, 7 letters, 7 words to change the league. Not one, not two, not three, not four. Everybody hated him after that. Everybody hated him. And then not to mention, for those first few games, like people forget, those first few games, they were terrible. They were flat out terrible. They were like 9-8. Right, like for those first few, like for this team to kind of be built the way it was built, to kind of do the braggadocious things that they have done, for them to start off that slow, oof, we hated it from the jump. And I'll be honest with you, Steph even got some strays too, right? I think Steph got some strays. Steph got some strays because it was more aimed at KD, but it just so happened to get him some strays too because of the fact that the KD ring chasing allegations will never be beaten if he does not win a title anytime soon. I think Steph kind of got some too because it went from like Splash Brothers to changing the way the league looks at you guys, the babyface assassin, to I don't like his family. And it always kind of goes there too. It always, for some reason, always slides into this weird obsession with like someone's family. They don't like how their family is involved with it. And Aisha's saying and doing weird stuff, and he's embarrassing Steph, and it always gets weird like that when family gets involved. And and again, Steph just caught some strays from KD, and it was the super team, kind of the decline of the super team with the fraud allegations there. Especially didn't help that a few years later, after KD left there, they ended up winning. So it's just social media always needs a villain for it to kind of process itself. And when you are winning a lot, when you do give out cocky, kind of, comments, or you start doing and moving in ways that people don't like you, or you start making more money and people really don't like you, then it just starts to bowl over. And I just don't know if dynasties ever can really recover. But I do think dynasties are going to start being looked at as different types, right? Because I just don't think now it's going to be hard because dynasties have always been viewed as did you win a title? Are you winning a title? And now for it to kind of be viewed as, you know, less about winning a title and now more about dominance and how long you've been there, right? Perfect example, Bama. For my college and late adult years, they have run everything in NCAA, in football per se. Now they aren't as dominant as they once used to be. I think you have to view it as not less dominant and so to speak of winning titles each year, to where they're constantly in the championship conversation. They're constantly there. If they have a 5-year span of where they're always in the playoffs, then yeah, that's viewed as dominance and that's viewed as a dynasty, so to speak. Can you, can you, stay relevant for long? Because that also is a key thing that kills dynasties: relevancy. We live in a time frame where if you are not in the eye of 24/7, your relevancy fades. So that helps play a role in the decline in dynasties. So overall, I don't think dynasties are going to go away completely. Obviously, there are going to be teams who are still going to be great players and great teams. As long as they can avoid some of these pitfalls, dynasties will still be around. It's just in a case of in what form will we see dynasties go. Thank you for attending probably one of the most in-depth conversations here on Because I Have a Live Mic. Yeah, I'm living up to that award nominated. I didn't win, by the way. Shout out to the 290 podcast for, thank you for listening, for graciously hosting me and my wife at Urban Lux Cafe. It was cool little spot. Y'all need to, go check it out. I'll put the address in the comments because they ain't paying me for this, so they ain't getting no drop like that. But again, shout out Fluent Radio for putting me on. Shout out to y'all for listening. Until next time, guys, I got 2 fingers for you. Deuces. Because I Have a Live Mic was proudly presented to you by Fluent Radio, where all things are fluent. Please like, share, and subscribe. All right, 2 fingers. Deuces.